But let's start there, man. Because I think, was I incorrect? Am I incorrect in saying that you were commenting on the way ESPN is presenting the NBA?
Yeah, it's just in the DNA of what ESPN does since the Mark Shapiro era. Mark Shapiro obviously is what is he, COO of Endeavor now?
Yeah, I didn't follow the various machinations of his career post ESPN, but yeah, big major figure at ESPN, somebody who went to war with David Stern actually over the WNBA of all things. And even if he is not there, he has left a legacy, as you are saying.
Yeah, he was like ESPN's anointed whiz kid, and basically the guy that came up with the debate show format. And which, this was Cold Pizza launched in 2001, I believe, 2001, 2002. And it's, 2024. And the format has, stayed for 20 years. And if anything, it's gotten stronger and infiltrated more and more of what ESPN does. And I think it's an interesting comparison between what NBA fans are looking for and what ESPN as an entity is looking to do, where you're getting debates and trade rumors during a national broadcast instead of actual hype, preparation, and storytelling about the players, the teams, the game, the rivalry itself, and even going to a degree to make Stephen A. himself, the king of the debate at ESPN, the feature topic about a particular game that's going on, which just happened with New York versus Indiana, because Stephen A. is obviously a very, very big Knicks fan.
Yeah, it's so interesting to me how corporations operate in this way. I've made the analogy to how at Nike they missed on Steph Curry because they've got a model. Their model was Michael Jordan. That's their model for success. And that's an athletic wingman, swingman, whatever. And Steph Curry was not that. And so they could not see behind or see beyond what their model was. And Stephen A. has become that for ESPN because he is tremendously talented, charismatic, and as Charles Barkley has said, he's on the TV when I fall asleep and he's on the TV when I wake up. So he is just all over. And it makes sense that he's become the sort of star that he has become. But ultimately what happens, since he has become their Michael Jordan and he has been the head of this successful model of debate shows, I'm sure First Take made them a lot of money. It's very cheap to put on. The issue is that everything just becomes reflective of that. It's almost like the paperclip problem with AI, where the AI will malfunction and just assume it needs to make everything into paperclips. You've got a TV sports presentation, a game, something people feel just emotional about and have a connection to and have watched with their parents. And, there's this continuum with it, and it gets turned into debate, paperclip, or it gets turned into a debate in this instance. And I felt it was interesting to me that Game 7 was such a seminal moment, because I get annoyed with things. I get annoyed with the way these things are presented on occasion, but I don't necessarily believe other people care so much. People just want the games. That's what matters. That's why, and we'll talk about it later, that's why the NBA is okay giving the heave-ho to Turner and to Inside the NBA, despite all that, mutual success and branding and everything else. It's about the money and it's about the live rights. But this was a big deal. That Game 7 where they talked 99% Knicks and it revolved around Stephen A., man, were you surprised by the backlash to it, or is that something that was just obvious to you that was going to cause that backlash? And do you think they're going to change because of it?
I don't think they're going to change. Your earlier comment about Charles Barkley, seeing Stephen A. when he wakes up and when he goes to sleep. When does Stephen A. sleep? I want to know.
Well, it's in the office.
And I'm also wondering, because he's got his separate Stephen A. show. Does does he lease office space or studio space from ESPN for a separate studio show so he doesn't have to go somewhere else? Because otherwise, I'm like, this guy's day has to be absolutely impossible.
I might be wrong about this. Spike Eskin would have the true details. Yeah. I think that space might be at WFAN, where he's producing his podcast and giving his takes. Now, from what I hear behind the scenes, Pat McAfee's success really lit a fire under Stephen A. Because,
yeah, for sure.
I mean, Stephen A. notices the money that they pay McAfee. I don't know if I believe all the reports about the money. It's a little bit like one of those NFL contracts where I don't know how much of this is real and how much of this is some sort of miasma of maybe potentially. But that's something that he was highly aware of. And then he could see the independence that McAfee had in having his own podcast platform. And then the other guy who I think has inspired Stephen A. is Shannon Sharp, because Shannon Sharp's podcast is just this tremendous success. And so it's funny how he is trying to build this independence from ESPN inside of ESPN while helping ESPN, while ESPN undermines itself while trying to be too much like him and revolve around him, this one guy.
Yeah, you know what's funny? I actually think Stephen A. outside of sports is really entertaining.
Oh yeah,
I think he
it's
does
my
have
Stephen A.
I think he does have a chance to like break through like that, but you know, he is ESPN 7 days a week, so it's hard to do both things concurrently. But he's trying. But your question about if I was surprised if by the backlash, I wasn't necessarily anticipating it. But I think they went a little too over the top. And the fact that the Knicks got their ass kicked, I think also just elevated that a little bit. It's like you're talking, it's a game 7. Both teams have a chance. They just, they had lost, 3 of the last 4 games beforehand. Right. So why are we all Knicks all the time here? I was excited for the MSG game, all of that stuff. But given those circumstances, I'm not surprised that we had that backlash.
Well, it almost seems like it's the malfunction in AI that they over apply an insight or an understanding. Are there more New York Knicks fans than Indiana Pacers fans? Yes. There were over 1 million
100%.
people in the local market of New York City watching that game. But those people, I think, want the Pacers to be a worthy antagonist. That's what makes it matter more and mean more. If those presentations of those Knicks Pacers games told us nothing about Reggie Miller and the Davis brothers, then they just would have felt less special. And obviously they were special because Tyrese Halliburton is wearing the shirt with Reggie Miller doing the choke sign afterwards. So I think it's just an incorrect assessment to just max out and optimize to that degree. It's almost like a misapplication of analytics that we talk about. This idea of if you know that your slider is your best pitch, I'm just going to throw the slider 95% of the time. No, that's a bad idea. You need it mixed in with something else to make it really pop and to make it really special. So I think it just shows they don't really know what they're doing. It shows that I think David Roberts, who's the executive who has risen concurrently with Stephen A. It's almost like Lynn Merritt is the LeBron James as David Roberts is to Stephen A. Smith. It's a deep cut for you sneaker industry heads right there. But he's a guy who was aligned with Stephen A. from the early days. And as Stephen A. has gained power, his rabbi, as they used to say in The Wire, David Roberts has gained power. But David Roberts, used to that radio world, used to that debate show world. And that's a different world than trying to be the Dick Enberg of ESPN's NBA production. And so maybe none of this matters, Nate. That's another question. Does any of this matter? All this matter is really the games. That's all that matters. They're paying the NBA a ton of money to put on those games. And this is all just for cultural critics like ourselves who really deeply care. And this is all just on the periphery. Or does this matter? And ESPN needs to actually change for the sake of, I don't know, saving the league.
It sounds like the NBA is signing an 11-year media rights deal, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
It's a long marriage.
So it's really not about, like, you have this push and pull between media rights and that's where the NBA makes its bread and butter, right? You have that push and pull between that and what's actually making the NBA culturally relevant, what builds fans, what acquires and engages fans, all of those things, versus what is going on in the media landscape. The media landscape is we're in the long tail era of media. There are few things that still aggregate audiences, right? Like the NBA is not like the NFL at all, not anything close to that, but it's still something where you can get millions of people to watch at the same time, which is just rare in this day and age. So the NBA is able to take advantage of that. You've got various players that have various reasons for why they want to bid on the NBA. And the NBA is still able, I guess they're going to be tripling their rights deal, and which that's one thing. But then you have the other side of it where it's like, do people still love the sport at the same level that they did before? And are you continuing to build that cultural reverence and build fans and get people that want to teach their kids about this and all of that? Or is at the end of the day, it doesn't matter as long as they keep cutting checks. Who cares, right?
If I'm Adam Silver, my job is done. I feel like my job is done. I can retire. I got the money. That was my prerogative. But theoretically, it's someone's job to grow the league beyond it. I thought the timing was interesting. I'm not making any accusations here. I think that Andrew Marchand, who wrote critically about ESPN's NBA presentation in The Athletic, and John Lewis in Sports Media Watch, who wrote critically about the presentation of the NBA and ESPN, I think they could have easily had that happen and come to those conclusions independent of the timing. But if you want to be a conspiracy theorist, you might go, I wonder if the NBA is talking to people in media now that the ink is dry, now that the contracts are agreed to, and going, what the hell is with our partner? They need to get their shit in order. Maybe they weren't happy having those conversations earlier when that might, I don't know, shake things up a bit. Unlike TNT, ESPN, I don't think needs the NBA. They want the NBA. I don't think they need the NBA. Turner and Warner Brothers actually needed the NBA. Ironically, their CEO said that he didn't need the NBA, which might be why they don't have the NBA. But ESPN, I think that's somebody that's a partner the NBA wanted to keep happy. So it's very interesting timing-wise to see their coverage getting blown apart in mainstream publications right after the deal is done. If that's the case, then I say, well done, NBA. Good job. I mean, it shows you still care about your product. You're shaking your head. You don't buy this conspiracy theory.
No, I'm shaking my head because I'm like, man, I didn't think about that. That's actually something that's very feasible. That, we don't talk about the problems we have with our partner until the ink is dried, so we have some leverage here.